Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into how NASA is pulling off a massive internal transformation. To win the space race of tomorrow and make the absolute most of a $25 billion budget, they are completely overhauling how they engineer, how they hire, and how they strategize. This isn't just about building shiny new rockets. It's a fundamental pivot in how the entire agency operates right from the inside out. Let's break down exactly what this new era looks like.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the new space race. Then, why the moon is hard, building a nuclear NASA, insourcing the space workforce, and we'll wrap up with the future of space tech.
Part 1. The new space race. Global competition driving exploration. Let's get right into it.
So for decades now, human spaceflight has pretty much been defined by a quiet, steady presence in low Earth orbit. But suddenly, the pace is absolutely accelerating. Nations like China are moving incredibly fast, and it's creating a whole new paradigm. Now, NASA doesn't actually want to conquer the moon all for itself, but make no mistake, there is fierce competition right now for prime lunar real estate. And why does that real estate matter so much? 2 words: water ice. Water ice isn't just for future astronauts to drink. You can actually break it down into hydrogen and oxygen. That makes it literal rocket fuel. The craters at the lunar South Pole are essentially the most valuable gas stations in the entire solar system. They're vital for any deep space missions we want to do. But here's the wild part. This intense competition is happening right alongside deep international collaboration. Just recently, NASA officials were standing in Baikonur, Kazakhstan. That's the exact same complex that kicked off the very first space race with Sputnik. And they were there to watch a NASA astronaut launch on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft. It's all about ensuring operational continuity up on the International Space Station. So, as we're racing to secure these vital lunar resources, we're simultaneously establishing universal safety standards and relying on these international partnerships.
As NASA leadership points out, there's a space race, and the space race is a good thing because it helps drive good outcomes for both sides. It's a fascinating paradox, really. A tense geopolitical race actually provides the greatest possible shield for scientific funding. Think about it. This global competition is the ultimate catalyst. It affords NASA the flexibility to stop trying to please everybody and focus fiercely on the immense technical challenges ahead. It aligns the stakeholders, it secures that budget, and ultimately, it pushes all of humanity forward.
Moving on to part 2, why the moon is hard, leaving low Earth orbit.
This is probably the single most common question people ask about modern spaceflight. Why in the world has it taken half a century to get back to where we literally already were back in 1969? We often point fingers at a lack of geopolitical competition or maybe shifting presidential priorities over the decades, but honestly, the simpler and frankly much more brutal answer just lies in the physics. Sustaining a presence on the International Space Station in low Earth orbit is an amazing achievement, sure, but it is nowhere near as hard as leaving the Earth's gravity well entirely to reach the moon. To put this into perspective, just think about the thrust required to make this leap. When astronauts head up to the ISS, they ride on a Falcon 9 rocket. That takes about 1.8 million pounds of thrust to accelerate them to 17,500 miles per hour. Pretty fast, right? But to push Artemis 2 completely out of Earth's gravity well and hurl it all the way toward the moon, you need a staggering 8.8 million pounds of thrust to accelerate that crew to 25,000 miles per hour. That is just an almost unfathomable amount of violent energy being injected into a single spacecraft. And here's the kicker. The physics equation demands balance. You have to take all of that energy back out when the ship returns from the moon and slams into the Earth's atmosphere. It creates an entirely different, extreme thermodynamic that we just haven't regularly dealt with in decades. We basically spent 50 years optimizing for low Earth orbit, so catching up to the extreme physical demands of a lunar trajectory. That takes immense focus, time, and resources.
Section 3. Building a nuclear NASA. Doing what industry won't.
Now, NASA actually doesn't have a recruitment problem. They accept less than 1% of their intern applications. And as they playfully note, the sheer volume of kids running around in astronaut Halloween costumes proves the brand is still as inspiring as ever. The real challenge? That's retention. How do you keep the absolute most brilliant aerospace engineers in the world from leaving for highly lucrative, fast-moving private companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin? Well, you pivot to a nuclear NASA. This is a massive strategic shift toward developing actual fission reactors in space. It's all about exploring the outer solar system and eventually sending humans to Mars with, as they put it, the fewest miracles required. What that really means is that traditional chemical rockets just take way too long and need way too much fuel to get to Mars safely. Nuclear thermal propulsion, on the other hand, dramatically cuts down travel time and payload mass. It drastically reduces the physiological risks to the astronauts and cuts way down on the technological miracles needed to keep them alive on a multi-year journey.
There is this really fascinating separation of duties happening right now in the aerospace sector. Elon Musk's SpaceX employs 35,000 brilliant people. In fact, NASA leadership considers Musk to be perhaps the greatest entrepreneur and engineer of our time. SpaceX absolutely possesses the talent and the capital to build nuclear-powered spaceships, but they won't do it. Why? Because launching a fission reactor above the Earth carries extreme liability and just massive regulatory hurdles. We're talking dense international treaties and endless environmental reviews. Plus, honestly, there just isn't a viable commercial business case for it when a company can already make a fortune selling reliable chemical rockets or deploying their own data center satellites into low Earth orbit. So NASA realizes that to retain those absolute brightest minds, the ones who want to conquer the impossible, the agency itself has to blaze the trail on nuclear propulsion. They have to do the hard, unprofitable, highly regulated foundational work that the commercial industry actively avoids.
Part 4. Insourcing the space workforce, maximizing the $25 billion budget. Over the last few decades, NASA developed a really deep reliance on outsourcing. It got so extreme that an incredible 75% of NASA's workforce, we're talking over 40,000 people, became contractors provided by sophisticated aerospace staffing agencies. And the impact of this went way beyond just finances. It resulted in a severe cultural loss. NASA engineers literally stopped touching the hardware. They were basically told, hey, contractors do the hands-on work. When your best engineers are relegated to managing contracts instead of turning wrenches, that deep institutional knowledge degrades fast. And on a practical level, it slowed everything down. Imagine wanting to put a component into a thermal vacuum test chamber and having to wait an entire month just to align with the contractor schedule. For you, the taxpayer who's actually funding all of this, the financial inefficiency is perfectly summed up by a quote from NASA leadership. They said, "It's $4.5 billion a year that we are paying to rent our workforce." NASA was paying a massive premium just to maintain workforce flexibility. Think about that. They fought hard for a $25 billion annual budget and were spending nearly a fifth of it simply renting engineering brains, basically enriching staffing agencies rather than investing those dollars directly into space hardware. To fix this, NASA is actively reversing the trend. They've kicked off a major effort to bring roughly 14,000 contractors back in-house, converting them into civil servants. And this isn't just some accounting trick, okay? It's a strategic move to reclaim the entire life cycle of a mission. By owning the pipeline from start to finish, designing the spacecraft, building the hardware, testing it internally, launching it, and operating it, NASA is regaining its identity as a true hands-on engineering powerhouse. They are maximizing the scientific discovery value of every single dollar, transforming into a vastly more capable agency, and saving taxpayers huge amounts of money without having to cancel a single program. Win-win.
And finally, Part 5, the future of space tech, telescopes, and X-planes. So, with their workforce optimized and teams tackling next-generation propulsion, we finally get to see the sheer scale of what they are launching next. On August 30th, NASA is launching the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope on a Falcon Heavy rocket. Now, the Roman telescope is going to be a fundamental shift in how we map the cosmos. It boasts 100 times the field of view of the legendary Hubble telescope. And get this, a scan rate 1,000 times faster. Think of it as the ultimate wide scanner, just surveying vast expanses of the universe at absolute breakneck speeds. But the true genius here is how it actually pairs up with the James Webb Space Telescope. When Roman scans the sky and spots something truly unprecedented, NASA will point James Webb right at it. Webb acts as the soda straw, conducting a hyper-focused, deep-dive investigation into that specific anomaly. This orbital tag team is going to lead to discoveries that we can barely even comprehend today.
But hey, NASA's innovation isn't just focused on deep space. They're looking right here within our own atmosphere, too. NASA is officially bringing back the X-planes. Back in the 80s and 90s, NASA had this thriving portfolio of radical experimental aircraft pushing the very boundaries of flight. Well, after losing their way for a bit, they are back with the X-59 quiet supersonic demonstrator. The ultimate goal here is to completely revolutionize commercial air travel, allowing passenger airliners to fly across the country at supersonic speeds without anyone on the ground ever hearing a sonic boom.
NASA has made it very clear that one X-plane is simply not enough. They plan to fill the skies with a whole fleet of experimental technologies in the years ahead. As they reclaim their hands-on engineering roots, tackle the brutal physics of returning to the moon, and build the very nuclear engines that will eventually take us to Mars, it leaves us with one incredibly thrilling question to end on. With NASA moving this fast and aiming this high, just how soon will a radical, silent X-plane be flying right over your local stadium?